Decatur Tree Ordinance, Decatur Tree Ordinance, Decatur Tree Ordinance. Do the dance, Decatur tree or the dance. Do dance or tree, Cater dance. Tree K to the bands. Let's advance with Decatur tree or the dance. And then it gets crazy.
Where you've got a reduction in percentage value. So in the existing ordinance, under your large, medium, small, very small, you have a flat number without the percentage modifier. So theoretically, when people have been replacing trees that have kept us flat, now you're doing a discounted credit associated with that percentage. So in other words, if I've got to put back 10,000 square foot of canopy trees, in the current ordinance, I'm doing straight off the numbers. It's a 1-for-1 trade. Now I'm almost a 2-for-1 if I'm doing large. I'm almost encouraged to go to the very small because I'm getting a higher percentage, quite frankly.
In part of the ordinance, unless you read through the entire ordinance, the new version, it says that it has to be similar canopy.
Right. And
so you can't do a small for a large.
And based on a
common sense tells me, and I'll break this down at the end of this video, that it's going to take 50 years to be that canopy replacement. So if you plant twice as much now, you're still not getting the benefits of that old growth you just cut down.
We're asking to save the best trees on the lot. So there are not many lots left over in Decatur that are fully treed with healthy, sound, fair or better trees. A lot of them are in poor condition, unfortunately.
So that, in that case, you could go through the Board of Appeals. Okay.
But it is restricted. I mean, I'll agree. It's
very restrictive, very restrictive.
But is it really? Considering the benefits trees give us, these restrictions are simply stopping us from jumping off a bridge.
It only regulates 6-inch diameter. So a sapling you could take out before it was 6 inches without any kind of permit. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Anything less than 6 inches in diameter.
Gregory Chillick brings up possible equity issues.
there are alternatives to tree replantings.
Oh, and by the way, the replanting can happen somewhere else in Decatur. It doesn't have to be on your lot.
Which involve installation of on-site green infrastructure, desirable but expensive.
Could be granted, and then supporting efforts on education for how you would actually go about requesting those exceptions for both hardship, but also if you wanted to install an ADU in your property and you wanted to request a special exception for affordable housing, being very clear about what that process looks like. So it was a great conversation. I'm happy to answer any more questions about where that conversation went, but it has been looked at.
Several speakers, as you've seen in part 1 as well, dispel the myth that it would be okay to allow a homeowner to remove any one tree at their own discretion. This is why.
Good evening. My name is Erin Murphy. I live in Oakhurst. I've lived in Decatur since 1999. I'm here to speak in strong support of the new tree ordinance. Decatur has been going in the wrong direction for a long time when it comes to canopy preservation. This ordinance can fix that problem, but it needs to remain at least as strong as it is in its current form. The staff memo tonight states that canopy levels between 2009 and 2019 are stable.
It didn't grow. We just stayed the same.
But that is only a rough summary of where we really are. The truth is, if you look at our planning goals and our canopy study, Decatur has been struggling for a decade to make progress on its canopy goals. In 2012, the city, in our most recent forest management plan, set a goal to add approximately 150 acres of canopy by 2037. That was and is a significant undertaking. The plan states 150 additional large canopy trees above replacement need to be planted each year throughout the community. How are we doing with that goal? Since 2013, we have lost 58 acres of canopy and added 118 acres of impervious surface, according to the city's latest canopy study. An additional 10 acres of canopy were removed in 2020 that were not accounted for in the canopy study. The problem is only accelerating. Our group, Save Decatur's Trees, has done an analysis of city records, which shows the amount of canopy removed each year has roughly doubled between 2015 and 2020, from 238,000 square feet in 2015 to 464,000 square feet removed in 2020. The truth is, we have lost canopy, added impervious area, and there is an urgent need to take action to make up for this lost ground because we are well behind those goals. Thankfully, we have a chance to do something about it. This ordinance moves things in the right direction and would set a new goal that makes up for those losses by calling to add about 238 acres of canopy. Tree canopy mitigates the heat island effect, improves property values, reduces stormwater flooding, and has benefits even to the mental health of the community, in addition to air quality. Decatur aims to be a sustainability leader. This ordinance is a big step in the right direction. The ordinance contains many critical improvements that the community has been calling for since at least 2018. Foremost among them, the elimination of any property owner to remove 3 trees in 18 months without meaningful replanting or conservation requirements. These are some of the good things in the ordinance that we need, and most of these that I'm about to list are based on the recommendations made by the ESB to the City Commission back in November of 2018. Requiring 75% of existing canopy to be preserved during the construction project of fair and good condition trees. Prohibiting full lot scrapes by limiting disturbance to the buildable footprint with a 25% margin.
I 100% support doing something far more severe on commercial, not allowing somebody to completely scrape when they do a new house. Totally behind stuff like that.
Requiring that property owners to plant a front yard shade tree when they remove a tree or get a land disturbance permit. Requiring planting for trees first in the permitting process and hiring an additional arborist. Together, these conservation provisions will start to turn the trend of canopy loss indicators so that we have a chance of meeting our long distance goals. There are many ways in which this ordinance does not go far enough to protect trees, does not include a tree board to hear appeals or make recommendations. It does not utilize the more protective standard of diameter at breast height to measure trees, instead of using the more subjective canopy standard. The ordinance does not create an independent class of protecting priority trees. All of these were recommended by the city's Environmental Sustainability Board, but did not make it into this iteration of the ordinance. As the Planning Commission, you know our motto is that Decatur plans and it follows through. Now is our chance to follow through. Thanks.
But there are other myths, or should we say suspicions, or even superstitions circulating about this tree ordinance. Erin Murphy addresses that here. 1. Removal of diseased, dead, or dying and hazardous trees is permitted through this tree ordinance, of course, and only requires an information permit from the arborist. If a tree is deemed a danger to property or people, it can be taken down. Secondly, homeowners still have the ability to remove trees in fair or better condition with this ordinance. The only difference under the new ordinance is they have to comply with the canopy requirement. For example, replant in order to replace the canopy lost from the removed trees.
I've already had 1 tree die in my lot, and if this other one goes, then, I can't do anything. I couldn't, put even a small addition on without having to, tree bank, tree survey.
Number 3, despite how the city spends the data, Decatur is losing canopy and adding impervious surfaces, both which contribute to the heat island effect. Replanting alone is no longer sufficient. If the city maintains its canopy, it will stay at 57%. Because the city has stated a goal of increasing its canopy, a higher canopy of 65% was included in the new ordinance.
I know there were a lot of comments in the October hearing requesting an increase to 70%. And yeah.
The Environmental Sustainability Board, I believe what they were thinking is that was not enough of an increase over the existing 57%. I think they were wanting to encourage a 10% increase in canopy.
That the 65% goal, I do not believe that is sustainable, so I'm concerned about that. I think the original 60% was a very high goal.
Just a 3% increase was not a high enough goal to meet Decatur's goal made back in 2012 to add 150 acres of trees by the year 2037. And finally, Save Decatur's Trees supports the Better Together Advisory Board's recommendations for amending the tree ordinance as it relates to the equity and its canopy loss fee. We agree that fees should be structured so that residents can improve their properties and renovate their homes without being penalized. And now let's move on to our next speaker.
My name is Sonali Sandane. I have been living in Decatur for 13 years, and before that, I taught in Decatur many years. My husband and I decided to have a family here and move to Decatur because of the trees. And so I fully support the current ordinance. We need bold actions here in Decatur to preserve and protect our trees. I urge you to pass this ordinance or to make it even stronger and more conservation-minded here tonight. I understand there's a proposal being discussed in the community and here to create a major exception to the conservation and replanting requirements of this ordinance in the form of allowing property owners to remove one tree every year or two. The time frame is uncertain, as are so many things about how the suggestion would be implemented in practice. However, you slice it, a one tree provision should be major exemption, even if only one tree were allowed over long time scales, such as up to 5 years. Save Decatur Trees has obtained permitting data from the city since 2014. A review of this data shows that 75% of these permits were for just one tree on one site. So, vast majority of the trees removed in Decatur could likely take advantage of one tree exemption, even if it were just for one tree every 5 years. It could swallow the entire ordinance. In that case, we might as well not have any tree ordinance at all, because we are not going to make up our canopy losses by focusing only on the remaining 25% of the trees. This is a major exemption being proposed that would certainly undermine our canopy goals and conservation efforts. Unfortunately, this type of provision would just repeat the policy mistakes of the past. Allowing this kind of exemption is how we got to the place we are now. The good news is this type of major exemption is unnecessary. The City Commission has already considered the concerns of homeowners who may wish to remove a tree for a deck, addition, or any other purposes. In short, it's already allowed under this draft of the ordinance. In its November meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Tony Powers asked whether a homeowner could remove a tree in those scenarios. And in response to that question, staff made further revisions. In the December meeting, the commission considered changes to the ordinance that would allow for such removal and still provide for reasonable conservation and replanting measures. So if this one tree exception is proposed here tonight, it is seeking to solve a problem that does not exist. The city could grant relatively informal administrative exceptions, like working with the city arborist, in addition to more formal variances in site-specific cases. Frankly, there is already too much flexibility built into this ordinance, and I'd like to see some of those provisions tightened.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Leake, and I stand this evening because I've been pleased with what I've heard from Mr. John and Ms. Kay about the complexity of this issue. And I would stress to you that it's important to get whatever enacted, because the advisory board that the commission has appointed as well on an annual basis will allow Decatur to move forward with correcting the tree deficiencies that exist.
I got a question.
Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment?
We're not going to condemn an easement to plant a tree in somebody's yard. It would be simply that would allow the expenditure of public funds to plant a tree on private property by acquiring an easement. And the easement would be extinguished after 2 years, a voluntary measure.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to provide public comment? Who's here in person?
And it sounds like we all relatively support the review on the commercial properties, City Hill properties, or new constructions of single-family homes, or possible modification. But again, we don't have the data in front of us to review, but we deny this in its current format. That makes sense?
And I think you had a note about discretion. I think,
And to maintain
but maybe it's maintained some discretion.
some discretion or, yes.
All right. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye and raising your hand. so that we can keep track of all the ayes? Aye. All opposed? Nay?
Nay.
The ayes have it. The recommendation is to recommend denial of the ordinance in its current form with constructive input to the city commission. Thank you very much. You
Thank you.
and your team did an exceptional job presenting complicated information this evening.
How you gonna change the world? Are you gonna be the changer? Are you gonna wait for change to rearrange you? How you gonna change the world? Are you gonna be the changer? Are you gonna wait for change to rearrange you? Gonna stage a show for the universe, so she can see her stars, so she can see you glow. Let's stage a show for the universe. We're gonna sing a verse for the universe, so she can see her stars, so she can see you glow. Just one word, one verse, as we traverse the space, rehearsing light, reversing this version of version to life. Just one word, one verse, one voice can make a difference. Don't be shy to be the first.
There are just numerous benefits that our political leaders are missing because they are so enamored with development. And I'm not anti-development. I'm just saying if you're a developer and you're making money from your development and you're causing this problem, you should deal with your problem.
That's right.
You gotta make this sustainable. You should not be passing it on to everyone else, folks downstream, and just totally destroying rivers and streams and polluting the quality of life of folks who could live as close as next door to you.
Now, speaking of living next door, I just wanted to address Mike's comment here that y'all saw on the Decaturish, in that, well, maybe we're not hindering people that make up this community. I'm going to challenge you on that last thing that you said, Mike, with this point. I'm not sure what about it feels hindering to you, because the property owner, like we've said several times in this video, can take down a tree. The owner would need a permit, which is already required under the current ordinance, so it's not more restrictive in that way. That is not new. The difference is that the owner would then need to replant to make up for the canopy requirement, and this doesn't even have to be necessarily on their own lawn. But consider this. Tree loss actually impacts the entire community, and not only just the vast community, but your very neighbor, because there have been many examples in Decatur where a property owner took down a tree and the next door neighbor afterwards had significant flooding issues because those root systems were holding it all together. So why should the very next door neighbor pay the price for someone else's actions in removing a tree? This could help to mediate all of that and educate and just create a stronger interwoven ecosystem together. Now, it's easy to think we're just being activists, we're just being tree huggers, but there actually is a true economic value of trees. Let's discuss.
Over a 50-year lifespan, these trees on that property, we can thank them because they've done this twice already, generated about $32,000 worth of oxygen, $62,000 worth of air pollution control, and recycle $37,500 worth of water, and they control $31,000 worth of soil erosion. I see that that's part of the choice that you have today, to either allow all these trees to go or to preserve as many trees as possible, preserving the land and the health of the people who live next door and in this county, but also all of Georgia because of the oxygen levels. It also, I think, reduces the city's costs based on those facts. Oxygen production, air pollution control, water recycling, and soil erosion control.
And there was a question in the comments that we've heard. Well, the question was, when you pay those fees and fines, how do they get spent?
I'm wondering if the penalty fees that people get are directed towards a certain budget. And if there are penalty fees, I'm wondering about putting that money towards buying more land conservation.
So a fine, let's say you violated the ordinance and you were prosecuted in municipal court. Typically a fine goes into the general fund. Mm-hmm. A payment for canopy loss or alternative compliance would typically go into the tree bank, which is then used for planting trees, education. We have used it to buy property with trees.
So if someone goes to the tree commission and they're asking for an exception or a variance from these standards and they get an adverse decision, what would their recourse be at that point?
Well, I think again, it would be to the Board of Appeals.
So are the commissioner's signs yellow and the Board of Appeals blue?
Change the world. Are you gonna be the change? Are you gonna wait for change to rearrange you?